Washabihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our fourth day and our final day of Kliks 3. We have such great opportunities of getting to know one another, and we know some of you have been here from Kliks 1, Kliks 2, and now we are in Kliks 3, and hopefully we maintain our intellectual connection with one another, our spiritual connection, and strengthen our unity, inshallah. I'd like to share something based on our discussion yesterday. We do have occasionally people questioning the importance of Kalam and the importance of learning intellectual sciences that perhaps seems like it has nothing to do with Islam. It is narrated that Imam al-Fakhruddin al-Razi, the renowned theologian and exegete, was walking among huge crowds celebrating him, while an old woman looked on, confused. She asked, "Who is that?" They told her, "He is Imam al-Razi, and he has 100 proofs of God's existence." She asked again, laughing, "But why would he need those, unless he had 1,000 doubts?" The Imam was impressed by her remark and used to pray thereafter, "Oh Allah, grant me faith like that of the old woman." So today, we think about it, do we still have such old women? I personally have an encounter with old women who, out of desperation, tell me that she wished she would be a cat. She wished she was born a cat rather than a human being and having to face all the worries every day for her future descendants. To her, I couldn't tell about Neoplatonism. But perhaps some of our young women here, you will not have the problem. And so it's something to think about. So moving on, today we have Brother Muhammad Abdul Aziz, Brother Rafiq Karim Panakal, and Brother Munir Biruk. And to moderate our presentation today, I would like to invite Dr. Wan Muhammad Azam Muhammad Amin, an Associate Professor from the Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion. Tafaddal.
Thank you very much, Sister Harlina. The honorable guest, Prof. Basil here, Prof. Torla, some of them I do not know. The respected colleagues, brothers and sisters, and also the presenters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we have another session, the last day I supposed. We have three presenters. Brother Muhammad Abdul Aziz from a graduate student of IIUMs, who will talk about the integration of knowledge, the Gontor experience, and Rafiq Karim will talk about the significance of meanings, situating interpretive anthropological approach in revisiting religious ritual and practices. And number 3 is Monir Biruk. The topic will be the condition of a creative Islamic discourse, insight from the works of Toha Abdul Rahman. Toha Abdul Rahman, one of graduate students in this university doing on this topic. Yeah, PhD, one of the PhD students. But anyway, it is a good topic here today, and each presenter will be given, as usual, 20 minutes, and you will be allotted 15 or 16 minutes, and then the rest you have another 3 or 4 minutes. All right, so we have to observe the time because we are already late, 30 minutes. So this session is expected to end at 11, the organizer. Yeah. Without further ado, I would call upon Muhammad Abdul Aziz to present his ideas on integration of knowledge, the Gontor experience. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I would extend my thankfulness to the committee who giving me this golden opportunity to present my paper entitled Integration of Knowledge Gontor Experience. Okay. I will divide my talk here into three levels. The first is why, and then how and what. I mean by why is Gontor topic is interesting, and how is such a system of Gontor can be implemented, and what has Gontor achieved by means of its system of integration of knowledge. Okay, first, why is Gontor topic is interesting? To answer this question, I want to draw a list of Gontor alumni. Okay, there are many influential Gontor alumni, but I draw the select alumni we see here. We call Kiai Haji, the religious preacher, Idam Khalid, and also Hashim Muzadi. These two religious preachers who are alumni of Gontor lead the one of the biggest socio-religious organization in Indonesia, which is Nahdlatul Ulama. Other than that, we can see in the meantime another alumni who lead another biggest organization in Indonesia, which is Muhammadiyah. We see here. So this is very interesting. Other than religious preacher, Gontor also produced another aspect, which is Hidayatul Wahid, Luqman Hakim Saifuddin. They are engaged in political party. So there are preacher, there are political, as well as Nur Khalis Majid. Maybe you are more familiar with this figure, Nur Khalis Majid and MH Ayun Najud. They are intellectual as well as a poet. And then also Hasanin Juwaini. He just received the Raymond Magsaysay Award for his achievement in developing environment-based education. This reality leads to us, how come Gontor is very, produce alumni who have action in very numerous fields, in Nahdlatul Ulama, in Muhammadiyah, in political, in social. So not only one side. This is cause because Gontor has its own, I call theology of integration. This is a very, very manifest in the Gontor curriculum. Okay, what has Gontor integrated? Gontor has integrated the system of madrasah and pesantren. We see here, student must be inside campus, as well as Gontor has also produced and established 18 official branches across Indonesia, as well as its alumni has established also similar institution, education institution, number 350 similar institution. So this is very influential. The second, Gontor also has managed to integrate religious and secular sciences. this one. So you can see the assessment consists of academic and non-academic aspect. I think this also takes place in UAE, but I see in Gontor is more practical. And then this is one of the biggest achievement of Gontor. Gontor also has managed to integrate the Ummah by means of its integration of madrasah and pesantren, as well as religious and secular sciences. So, from where Gontor inherit this system of integration? One of this, because Gontor inherit the reform spirit from that take place at the last 19th century. There are Muslim Brotherhood, there are Aligarh University, and then in Indonesia Padri movement. This is called reform spirit. I think they're not necessary. Okay, now we come to the factors that inspired Gontor to have the system of integration. I divide into two, internal and external driving factors. The first is materializing family's aspiration. Gontor founding fathers can be regarded as the noble family. Their grandfather also established pesantren, so this is the aspiration to establish another Gontor. As well as this one, very important, the intellectual interplay within the three founding fathers of Gontor. The three founding fathers of Gontor consist of Ahmad Sahal, Imam Zarkasi, and Zainuddin Farani. But the most influential is Imam Zarkasi. From where? From whom Zarkasi have the intellectual influence. Imam Zarkasi has been influenced by its background, classical pesantren, we call Salaf pesantren, as well as Omar al-Hashimi. Omar al-Hashimi was the intellectual refugee from Tunisia, and his influence to Zarkasi is very, very influential, particularly in the spirit of reform. As well as Mahmud Yunus, this is also popular among us. Mahmud Yunus is the reformer also in educational field in Indonesia. And the second, classical pesantren, if we outline from pesantren Josari, Jorasan, Solo, Mambaul Solo, and from Umar al-Hashimi, he inherit Arabic native discipline and mind dependent and ummatized paradigm. And from Mahmud Yunus and the father of Hamka, Haji Rasul, Zarkashi inherit the Arabic direct method, Tariq al-Mubashara. This is also famous. The integration of religious and natural sciences. Okay, next to the external driving factors, reform spirit that I have presented earlier, nationalism, jurisprudence, educational, and aspiration. What I mean by reform spirit is the spirit of integration. Gontor has managed to have ummatized paradigm. And there's also in the field of jurisprudence, Gontor does not affiliate to any school. I mean, not really fanatic. Non-partisan. And education also has managed to integrate pesantren and madrasah, and Gontor also has managed to integrate for aspiration. Gontor want to be like Al-Azhar, like Aligarh, like Sangit and Santiniketan in India, Sangit in Africa. Then Gontor establishment cannot be separated also from the social responses at the time. So anti-imperialism at the time, Gontor was established at 1926. Also, the establishment is intended to meet the educational demand. Okay, now we come to answer the question how such a system of integration can be implemented. Swan. So as far as I'm concerned, the big achievement of Ngontor is it has managed to translate from the theological thought to educational thought. We see here 5 spirit, motto, 5 plans, orientation, and alumni profile. There are 5 philosophical values, but I will outline here only one. Okay, this one, 5 spirit. It consists of sincerity, simplicity, self-sufficiency, Islamic brotherhood, and freedom. The sincerity of Ngontor lies, among others, in the fact that all teachers of Ngontor are not paid. So not paid. Yes, Ngontor will meet their daily needs, but in terms of pay, like other institutions, Ngontor does not apply it. And simplicity, the simplicity of Ngontor does not lie in the way they wear, but most importantly is Ngontor has managed to apply the principle of simplicity in the curriculum they use. If you see the book of Tamrinul Lugha, we call Tamrinul Lugha, by this book, Ngontor has taught so, I think, thousands of its students. Very, very simple. Very simple. Not like Al-Jurmiyah, not like Imriti, not like Alfiya, but very, very simple. Began from ism and then fi'al. So not like other books that we know. This is simplicity. Self-sufficiency lies in the fact that Ngontor, from its early establishment till today, is a private institution, so not dependent on the government. And despite its self-sufficiency, Ngontor has endowed this institution to the Muslim Ummah as waqf. And then Islamic brotherhood, I think very clear also. Islamic brotherhood spirit in Ngontor lies in the fact that Ngontor is not affiliated to any socio-religious political party. And then freedom. The freedom of Ngontor also means that Ngontor has allowed its students to study everything, to study to whosoever, as long as it is appropriate. Okay, next, this one that I have presented just now, the integration aspiration. This is the field that the principle of integration lies in. So the actual aspiration of Ngontor is not to produce a KMI system. The actual aspiration is to produce a university. And we have earlier Darussalam Institute of Islamic Studies, but this is not actual aspiration. The actual is to have a university. That means a university, like we know in Arabic, Jami'ah. Ma'nahu allati tajma'u bainal ulum al-aqliyah wal diniyah, means that Ngontor see that no division of knowledge. No, so a student should not only study religious knowledge, but also secular knowledge. Okay, next, this one. This one should be known also. In Ngontor, there are 2 important systems. KMI, Kulliyatul Muallimin Al-Islamiyah. This is a high school level. And then UNIDA, we call University of Darussalam. This is for higher institution. So in KMI, what has Gontor achieved? The integration of knowledge in KMI. Gontor has integrated between cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. As well as Gontor is popular also with its system called 24-hour curriculum. Meaning what you see, anything you see, anything you listen, anything you understand in Gontor is a means of education. I think this is something difficult to be applied in another institution as far as I'm concerned. Because I was at Gontor for 11 years, alhamdulillah, either as a student and a teacher. Okay, Gontor also has integrated religious and secular sciences. So this is, we know here in Gontor, in KMI level, Islamic studies, there are 20 subjects, and then general sciences, 10 subjects. So this is why we call Gontor has integrated the religious and secular subject. Then in the university level, Islamization in Indonesia, in KMI we call integration, but in the university level, Gontor has declared it has an official program, like in UAE, Islamization. How come? It embarked on Islamic worldview, the theology of integration, and then Islamization of knowledge. How this Islamization of knowledge can be applied? Gontor has established Center for Islamic and Occidental Studies, and then Ulama Categorization Camp. This program, the second program, has been established as a preliminary program. So anyone, both from Gontor background or another, should have this program if they want to enter to postgraduate program. So in this Ulama Categorization Camp, they will be trained, they will be taught Islamic worldview, which is Islamization of knowledge. And then Gontor also has established Center for Islamization of knowledge. The facilities, this is the thing that maybe we could not find in another university. Anyone who study in Gontor should be in campus, inside. So no one live outside. This one. Gontor has established 7 faculties and 17 departments, and all these faculties and departments should have subject of Islamic worldview. This is mandatory. And this is the achievement of Gontor. The Gontor, from the theology of integration, can produce in the field of education, culture, social, in jurisprudence, and politics. What education? Gontor has integrated pesantren and madrasah. In culture, Gontor has ummatais paradigm. In social, Gontor, as reflected in alumni's action, Gontor stands above and for all. Gontor also is not non-juridical fanaticism, and then non-political affiliation. Then this one. Social. In social field, we see the alumni that we have presented earlier, standing above and for all. Luqman Hakim Saifuddin is the current Minister of Religious Affairs of Gontor. So this is the evidence that Gontor stand above and for all. Education also, Gontor has Nur Khalid Masjid. This is in conformity with be an intellectual ulama, not an ulama knowing religion. What I have a quote, the standing above and for all, be intellectual. This is the message posed by Imam Zarkashi. So I mean, what he messages to the student is clearly manifest in Gontor. Jurisprudence, Gontor alumni can lead both Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah. So this is the message: be, O my pupils, a glue of ummah. So can integrate the ummah. And politik, Gontor can also have Hudayat Nur Wahid, Idam Khalid. Then the third achievement is this one. At the time of the establishment of Gontor, Indonesian educational constellation consists of two major currents, which is secular and Salaf. Secular, I mean, they do not know any religious subject, and then Salaf, very classical, so that its students do not study like empirical sciences. So Gontor at 1926 has established, and that's why it represents the Kholaf Pesantren. So in Indonesia there are Kholaf Pesantren and Salaf. This is the founding fathers of Gontor. We call Trimurti. This is Imam Zarkasi, the one who is most influential. This is Zainuddin Fanani, and this one Ahmad Sahal. They are siblings. And then this is activities we call Fathul Kutub. So even so at Gontor there is no classical system of pesantren, but the students are well trained in opening the manuscript. So there is a session for the last year to open classical books that we call Fathul Kutub. And then also, if maybe in a given pesantren, music is haram, prohibit, in Gontor they can receive music. So music can be considered as means of da'wah. So the Gontor also has a musician, not only religious preacher. And then this is the way they wear when teaching. So with coat, with tie. This is sometimes the people, the Indonesian people, consider this is too westernized. But from the you can imagine it. This the way of wearing the coat has taken place at 1926. You can imagine. So at the time is the time of the calling for independence of Indonesia. So Gontor has applied this modernity from its early establishment. Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Abdul Aziz. All the presenters, if possible, please sit in the front desk, because there is streaming online now. So the camera want to take your pictures. Please, Brother, in front. So thank you very much for Brother Abdul Aziz for presenting or introducing the Gontor and religious institution in Indonesia, which integrate between ulum ad-diniyah wa ulum al-aqliyah, the religious sciences and also the intellectual sciences, as Brother Abdul Aziz presented. The second presenter will be Brother Rafiq Karim, Rafiq Karim from University of Calicut, India. So he will be talking about the significance of meaning, situating interpretive anthropological approach in revisiting religious ritual and practices. Please welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil makhluqin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. For last 3 days we were engaged seriously with some brainstorming session regarding where we engaged with so many complicated theoretical formulation that falls within the purview of science of Kalam. There were so many experiments were done in which laws from physics, psychology, mathematics and biology were reactants along with Ilm al-Kalam. Today, in my paper, instead of these natural sciences and positive sciences, I want to place anthropology, especially cultural anthropology, or it is also known as symbolical anthropology, in place of all these natural and positive sciences. In this attempt, it is my aim to incorporate one of the recent development in anthropological studies popularized by the Clifford Geertz, an American cultural anthropologist, in his studies on the Muslim societies of Indonesia, Malaysia and Morocco and so many other African countries. The approach is interpretative anthropological approach. In doing so, it is my aim is to revisit some theological polemical debates in my own country, especially in my Kerala, in my own state Kerala, where religious rituals and practices were the themes of these debates. In that, there was debates between Sunnis and Salafis. By debating so, using the old-fashioned, old-established anthropological methods, there was a tendency of constructing so many binaries. In those debates, some sects, group of the Muslims, alleging others they are doing shirk and they are not on the way of Tawheed, they are kafirs. My attempt is to revisit these debates and try to change the nature of the debates from strong polemical to more dialogic one. Let us see what will be the result. I am not sure about this. I need your help also for more clarification in this. This is my title. I think you may read that Significance of Meaning, Situating Interpretative Anthropological Approach in Revisiting Religious Rituals and Practices. Here, the importance for meaning construction. You may be aware about the social construction of the realities. That is also related with the meaning construction. Here, my argument is that for a single action acted by many, there may be so many meanings. That means a single act may have so many meanings. That is what I mean by the social construction of realities, of construction of the meaning. I started by introducing what is the interpretative anthropological approach and the key concept related with that. This is, on the basis of the approaches, social sciences devised to study religion in particular and culture in general. They have been classified into two groups. This is interpreters and explainers. You can see the difference between interpreters and explainers. Interpreters are interpreting religion and culture from the standpoints of the participants. That means actor who is acting. At the same time, the explainer is only explaining on the manifest or the overt behavior of the actor. He is not actually participating in the action, and also he is also observing them detached from his subject of the study. There is a main difference between interpreter and explainers. Then comes to what is interpretative anthropology. It is developed as a part of the symbolic anthropology. In interpretative anthropology, there is a tendency to reduce everything into a text, then interpret it. That is the interpretative anthropology. This was developed by Clifford Geertz. This is a reaction against the Malinowski's and Radcliffe Brown and other Morgan and Taylor. All these were the classical anthropologists. These are a reaction against their objectivized, detached observation. They are also observing, but they are not participating in the group or activities. And on the basis of their stock of knowledge, they are giving meaning for others' action. This interpretative anthropology is a reaction to this established classical anthropological method. In the second one, Clifford Geertz in his work defines what is interpretative anthropology. One of the key terms related with it is the thick description. It calls for an epistemology and a writing methodology that will allow an anthropologist to interpret a culture by understanding how the people within that culture are interpreting themselves and their own experiences. This is a definition for the interpretative anthropological method. Then this thick description, that is a key to the interpretative anthropological method. Thick description for the first time brought into the studies by philosopher Gilbert Ryle. It was imported to anthropology by Clifford Geertz. Here is the difference between thin description and thick description. The explainers are using thin description, but the interpreters are using this thick description. In thin description, it is a physical action. It does not get much beyond outward appearance. It is a factual account without any interpretation. But here, they are analyzing everything, even the context, and when the time, and the cause behind it, and also who performed it, and his intention also. It needs a special training for the researchers to do this one. Then I want to cite one of the example from the Geertz work, the interpretation of culture, to have a better understanding of the thin and thick description. He also used this in his work, the wing example. Wing. Two boys. I took only two boys, may have so many boys. They are winging their eyes rapidly, not contracting but contracting the eyelids of their right eyes. We know that right eyes, they are on again. Two boys are doing this thing. And it has two meanings. I only mentioned here two meanings. One is an involuntary nervous twitch. There is a reflex action. While something foreign coming to our nose and entering our eyes, we are blinking our eyes and sneezing, something like that. This is also sometimes our eyes also blinking, our right eyes. That is the first one. That is a biological action, involuntary nervous twitch. That is called a twitch. The second one is a conspirational signal. Maybe it's to attract some girls. They are doing this. So, two or more boys are doing this. The action is same, but in case of the different person, this is different. There is a thin. Then comes to the one. The two movements are as movements identical. From an IIUM camera phenomenologist observation, one could not tell which was twitch and which was a wing. IIUM camera method, just you are looking without going to ask him why you do this and without not doing. That is IIUM camera method. The difference is unphotographical. Without interpreting or without devising this interpretative anthropology method, we could not find the difference between these two. We will also judge that all are twitching. But in the example, Geertz describes how one action, a wing, that outwardly appears to be the same, can in fact have multiple meanings depending on the intentions of the person who actually perform it. Here is thin on account of thin description of the wing example. On account of outward appearance, one will perceive both wings as simply the same actions. Here, it may be wing, teaching, winging, fake winging, parodies, and also rehearsals of the paradise, different meanings for the same winking. Then I want to cite some of the examples for single action but different meanings from general history of Islam. Here is one, the incident of restoring the black stone. There was a controversy during that reconstruction of the Kaaba. There erupted a controversy between the tribal Quraysh, different tribal groups of the Quraysh. This dispute was settled by the decision of the Prophet ﷺ. He called the tribal representatives of the everyone and took a clothes. All these representatives took the side of the hold one edges of the cloth. Also, Prophet ﷺ also hold the cloth. Then all these as a team, they restored this stone on its place. That is the action. There was a team who participated in restoring the black stone Hajarul Aswad on its place during the reconstruction. Physical action, putting the black stone on its original place. Meaning given by the Prophet ﷺ, a sacred stone but not worthy of worship. By the tribal representatives, an idol-like structure worthy of worship. While during that act, they, to them, two groups, there is two groups. One is Prophet ﷺ and others. They were idol worshippers. In case of the Prophet ﷺ, he see the Hajar al-Aswad as it has from Jannah. That is why it is not worthy of worship, but only a sacred stone. But in case of others, it is just like an idol. Then another example, running between Safa and Marwa, two hills. When for the first time this was included as a mandatory rukn in the Hajj performance, some Muslims were reluctant to do that. And I think I am not remembering the ayah. فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ أَن يَطَّوَّفُوا, something like that.
إن الصفا والمروة من شعائر الله فمن حج البيت أو اعتمر فلا جناح عليه أن يطوف بهما. That ayat related with that. Why they were reluctant? Because before Prophet ﷺ's instruction, in Jahiliyyah, they were doing these types of a similar activity. That is running between two idols, Isaf and Na'ila. The physical action, running between two physical forms, hills and stones, meaning running between two stones was done as part of their idol worship in Jahiliyyah. Running between the hills was a mandatory rukn of Hajj in Islam. Then I am coming to the next point, the role of intention and context in the process of meaning making. We know that the famous hadith, innamal a'malu binniyat, everything is on the basis of the intention. Actions are but by intentions. That is one of the postulates. The next one is I took one from the happened during the Prophet's days, the incident of Al-Hurqa. Al-Hurqa means, I think it is a tribe or clan. I am not about that. It's a tribe or clan. Prophet ﷺ said some companions. Among them was Usama bin Zayd. And along with the others, Prophet ﷺ sent them to Al-Hurqa to fight against them. They killed all of them, and at last they caught one. Soon he was caught. He recited La ilaha illallah. But then Ansari retreated. Along with Usama bin Zayd, there was another Ansari. He retreated from. But Usama bin Zayd, even after reciting La ilaha illallah, he stabbed him by his spear. And hearing this incident, Prophet ﷺ was so angry and he asked, "O Usama, did you kill him after he had said La ilaha illallah?" I said, but he said so only to save himself. During that period, he said that only to save himself. In another report of Amash, why didn't you dissect his heart to know? Did he say it or not? Did you dissect his body to see, did he recite it so or not? Intention. Another example, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam's calling by the sun as Lord. Hada, during his propagation of his Kaum, he recited when he sees sun rising, Hada Rabbi, Hada Akbar. But sun worship is not a part of Islam. Even after reciting this, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam remained as a Muslim. Intention, the role of intention is here. Then what Islam says about takfir. In Islam, takfir is a serious issue that should be handled very carefully. Because whoever pays like us and faces our Qibla and eats our slaughtered animals is a Muslim and is under Allah's and His apostle protection. So do not betray Allah by betraying those who are in His protection, who are Muslims. Another one, it is mandatory for a mufti to be careful as much as possible in attributing kufr due to the greatest danger inherent in it and the predominance of his unintentional state, especially when it is from layman. Another one, in his book, Tambihul Wulats wal Hukam, Ibn Abidin said that, it has been said that if there are 99 proofs of kufr but a single proof of his Islam, it is mandatory for the mufti to act in line with the latter. So in Islam, takfir is a serious case. Even the mufti and others should handle it with carefully. That means if there are any minute chances of having not kufr, then the mufti and others should take into consider that one and regard other 99 proofs of kufr. Then at last, this is my last part of the presentation. I am coming directly to the polemical debates in Kerala. This is between Sunnis and Mujahids. Mujahids means Salafis. In Kerala, Salafis are known by the name Mujahid because it is derived from their organization's name, Kerala Nadwatul Mujahideen. They are Salafis. Themes of the debates are polytheism, shirk, veneration of the saints and visiting their tombs, Maulid Nabi and some other forms of the ratibs. And I took only the istighatha. The difference between the Mujahids and the Sunnis, one of them is istighatha. Istighatha means the call for helping hand. And technically it means when a Muslim is in trouble, can she or invoke the intercession of anybody other than Allah. While it is agreed that Allah is a supreme power, invoking saints and the Prophet in times of the trouble is Islamic or otherwise. Then what do Sunnis says? Istighatha can be made to anybody other than Allah, like Prophet and saints. The sole and vital aim of these practices is to these great souls mediate between the believers and Almighty, or request their help, believing that such souls can help them prevent misfortune and bring good fortune. And Sunni ulama find legitimacy to their practices, bringing in the evidence of Imam Busuri, who narrated that believers call the helping hand of prophets, saints, even after their death. Further, they argue that the Quran itself says that great Sufis will not die even if their physical body disappears from this world. Islamic scholars such as Imam Razi and Imam Ghazali narrated that we can ask help from these saints for getting rewards from the God. This is the argument of the Mujahids. Mujahids argue that istighatha to any other body than Allah is shirk and a violation of Islam. It for this reason that the Mujahids strongly condemn visitation to syncretic shrines and practices of Sunni Muslim communities such as Nerza, that is a feeding, something that is related with the Urus, Maulud and Ratib. The Mujahid leader Wakka Maulavi wrote in Al-Islam magazine that keeping a prophet or a wali between a man and a God with a belief that he can intercede with God by virtue of his supernatural powers and God would act according to his intercession is shirk. He is one of his main leader, this Wakka Maulavi. The Mujahids in Kerala believe that the saint worship and other ceremonies related to it are a kind of idol worship because in Islam a Muslim can worship only Allah. Then time is exceeded. I am going to the conclusion. I think this is the nature of the debate. All the debates were, during that debate, they you could see that the textual approach in the debates, they are taking evidences from the texts, then they are arguing. But they are not going to the reality. What is the intention of those who are visiting the tombs and who are asking help to the saints? They are not going to ask what the meaning they are alluded or imparted to their actions. My attempt is that using this investigative anthropological method popularized by the Clifford Geertz could help us to dilute the polemical nature of the debates, then it will give for some more dialogical one. That is my attempt. Here I conclude my presentation. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Brother Rafiq, from phenomenological approach to the textual approach and so on. Yeah, it's quite interesting discussions. Presentations. The third presenter will be Brother Munir with the topic of the condition of a creative Islamic discourse, insight from the works of Taha Abdul Rahman. Please welcome Brother Munir.
Thank you, the moderator. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ikhwanihi wa hizbihi wa man ihtada bihadihi ila yawmiddin. Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. First, I'm delighted to be in the company of such a distinguished constellation of scholars and researchers. My topic today touches on the relationship between Kalam and philosophy, a relationship which has been blurred in certain ways, and it is much even blurred, I suppose, in my estimation, in the works of the Moroccan philosopher Taha Abdul Rahman. So it is a fact, maybe, in the Islamic history, if you could agree with me, that philosophers have always regarded themselves as superior or as engaged in a rational endeavor in comparison with mutakallimun, which has and ilm al-kalam, which has always been ascribed or assigned to a second position. Taha Abdul Rahman revisits the issue of philosophy and raises again the question of philosophy, not engaging with its content, but from a methodological perspective, asking about or just bringing back to the table the question of what is philosophy and how should we philosophize, a question which he claims has been ignored or has been ignored or skipped over in the history of in the Islamic history. So I just a note here, just my title is about philosophy, not Islamic philosophy, not Islamic discourse. This is the title I originally submitted. Yes. So what is philosophy and how should we philosophize? These are some of the two questions which I should touch upon in my presentation. What's the status of? Is there first an Islamic philosophy today, right, in the contemporary Arab Islamic world? And if there is, what is its status? It's highly probable that there is, okay? Most of people, right, describe themselves or are described as philosophers today in the Arab world. And but the status of the status of Islamic philosophy remains, has to be scrutinized even more. The Arab, there is a quasi-consensus today among philosophers and in Arab intellectuals in particular that philosophy is in crisis, is in some trouble. Let's start by representations of philosophy in the Arab, particularly in the Arab world. Philosophy I don't know what's the situation exactly in Arab Islamic world, but in the Arab world, philosophy is most of the time or commonly associated with blasphemy, sometimes with heresy, with sometimes even with atheism, or at least with unnecessary abstractions and disengagement from reality. This is, roughly speaking, the representation of philosophy, which is quite negative. Production of philosophy, right? There is the production is insignificant, okay, in comparison with other philosophical discourses for philosophical productions in other cultures, okay, the Western culture in particular, right? The reception also of Islamic philosophy is quite very insignificant, right? It's rarely do Western philosophers today take into account, seriously engage with the productions of contemporary Muslim, Arab Muslim philosophers. The concepts also, there is a huge consumption of Western concepts, and rarely do Muslims or Muslim philosophers, Arab Muslim philosophers, produce their own concepts which could be tackled, engaged, and activated in other cultural discourses. Problematics, okay, at the level of, not only at the conceptual level, but the level of problematics. There is, we seem, or just in the Arab Islamic discourse, there seems to be regurgitating of the problematics of particularly which are raised in Western discourse. Mode of reasoning as well. I shall come to this point later on in my presentation. Explanations quickly. Some would explain this the status of crisis in Arab Islamic philosophy by lack of subscription to philosophy, to modernity. We lag behind the modern discourse, and we fail to catch on the thesis of modernity. Thesis of modernity here, what I mean by the thesis of modernity, right? Ideas such as pure rationality, separation between realms, mainly religion, politics, okay, philosophy itself, autonomy, right, relativism, etc. So these are some linear progresses. So these are some of the theses of modernity. This is one explanation which is advanced or by some Arab intellectuals, particularly of secular inclinations. The other one is a position with regard to tradition. Okay, tradition has been seen by most of the Arab intellectuals as an inhibitor, right? Inhibition to philosophizing. Okay, they would. There is quasi unanimity also between Arab philosophers and intellectuals today. About the responsibility of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, right, who has been accused of stabbing philosophy, that a stab which philosophy has never been able to transcend since. And to transcend these two positions, okay, I want to mention, for example, the advances of these positions. For example, you can just think about two influential Arab intellectuals, Abdullah al-Arwi and Muhammad Abil Jabiri, both are Moroccans. To transcend, but there is one other explanation which is advanced by Taha Abdurrahman, who say that it's about, and who tries to transcend this binary of asala and mu'asara, modernity tradition, by ascribing the responsibility to the philosophers themselves, right? The culprits are the philosophers, whom he never hesitates to accuse of imitation, right? We can imitation and subservience. Okay, he says that this is the Achilles heel Achilles heel of Islamic philosophy, that since its birth has always been subservient or subordinate to the cultural different other, right? In the past to the Greeks, and in the present to the Western philosophy or Western tradition. And he accuses his Arab intellectuals of intellectual laziness, of imitation, and he never hesitates hesitates to accuse them of to call them al-muqallida, right? I was reading in the past days, Mustafa Sabri's book, right, and he uses quite similar terms, and this reminds us also of, if you read the works of Abd al-Rahman, it reminds you of the language, the same language which Al-Ghazali used against the philosophers whom he accuses of al-muqallida and similar terms. He says it is evident that our position with regards to thinking is not that of ones who think for themselves, but that of the status of those whom the other for whom the other thinks, or the status of those who conceded the right to thinking for the other, either by admiration or by obedience. To give you just a flavor of the kind of discourse which he uses in a strong assertive language against the Arab intellectuals, they say, for example, the Arabic philosophical discourse, be it a concept, a statement, or a text, is submerged by imitation. The Arab philosopher coins only the concepts which the other coins, and he uses only the concepts which, the sentences which the other uses, and he composes the texts which he composes. He hardly could add something of his own making and not of the creation of the others. He also says, do not you see that contemporary Arab philosophers interpret when others interpret, archaeologize when others archaeologize, deconstruct when others deconstruct, whether that is right or wrong, as if the land of thought was not so broad, so not expansive, so not broad, so that they could stroll freely in it. I would skip the part about who Abd al-Rahman is, just to save time. The problematic, so the intellectual project of Abd al-Rahman revolves about, you can reduce it to one single problematic, right? That is how to enable the Arab Muslim intellectual to philosophize in an autonomous and creative way. So how to bring about live philosophy, because he argues, philosophy today is almost dead, or just jamida, right? Dead, right? How to infuse life in it, right? So that it becomes, right, a locus of autonomy and creativity. I will hark back here to very quickly to Abd al-Rahman's insights about tradition, to study, important methodological study about tradition, about Turath, because he was provoked by Arab intellectuals who would either discard Turath or just pick and choose from Turath and from tradition. And he, in one of his books, just in all of his books, right, Abd al-Rahman is distinguished by not his thought is characterized by not focusing on the content, but rather on methodology, aliyat, mechanisms, which through which we can produce an authentic and creative thought. He says that he argues in nitpicking detail. I'm just summarizing here very quickly the characteristics of tradition. The Arab Islamic, it is holistic, the holistic conception of tradition, integration of sciences, by which tradition is there are interaction between sciences, tadakhul ulum, and order between sciences as well, fields of knowledge. And he coins, from his inductive investigation of tradition, he coins this concept of pragmatic field. Pragmatic because of his background as a philosopher of language, right? He harks back to the field of pragmatics, which studies language not only in terms of the relationship between between signifier and signified, but also in terms of use. So he says that the pragmatic field is composed of three components, right? Belief, that is aqidah, and language and knowledge. Language and knowledge. Language is a house of being. Knowledge is a mode of knowledge. So, and it says that this is a characteristic of all traditions. These three components, main components, it cannot be reduced. And he also coins this, or just comes up with this concept of pragmatic approximation. That is at-taqrib at-tadawuli, whereby he argues that the accommodation addition of knowledge, foreign knowledge in the Arab Islamic tradition has never been gratuitous, but has been subjected to epistemological and methodological processes, whereby the other or the received tradition takes foothold in the Arab Islamic tradition. So two rules. Each received knowledge, he comes up with these two rules. Each received thing or knowledge is objectionable until its worth is proved. And the second rule, the worth of homegrown, that is native knowledge, is conceded until otherwise is proved. Taha Abdul Rahman then comes up, right, to just he's constructed an intellectual project which he calls the jurisprudence of philosophy, fiqh al-falsafa, which is science which he says that which he boasts of constructing, which pretends to look or claims to look at philosophy as a science, how to philosophize rather than looking at the contents of philosophy. He says that what we need at this moment is how to philosophize. What are some of the mechanisms which can enable us to philosophize in an authentic and creative way. Very quickly, so I would apply this pragmatic تقريب تداولي, right? We can think of Ibn Hazm's تقريب المنطق and Al-Ghazali's تقريب of philosophy and Ibn Miskaway's تقريب of. So this concept of تقريب has always been in tradition, in our Turat. So pragmatic approximation of philosophy, one of the main things which he devoted many works to refute is the universality of philosophy, because this is a rampant and ingrained belief among Arab intellectuals that philosophy is universal and rational, and therefore it transcends time, it transcends place, and it supervises or presides over all other discourses. And I might say one of the myths which he tried hard to dissipate is the myth of demonstrative nature of philosophy, and I say demonstration al-burhan, and that philosophy cannot be burhanic, right? It's always hijaji, that is burhan is about formal logic and natural, since philosophy is written in natural language, it must be and it should be, and hijaji, right? The myth of the rationality of philosophy and universal. I'm skipping here. Universality of philosophy. So he comes to the conclusion that philosophy is the universality of philosophy is a myth, and philosophy is always already situated. So time traverses philosophy, and philosophy does not traverse or surpass or transcend time. So reflection. He comes to the conclusion in another book, right? The right of the Islamic right to philosophical thinking is to this conclusion that for an authentic philosophy, in terms of the first fundament of taqrib tadawuli, is that reflection on phenomena should necessarily be predicated on the realm of al-ayat. علم الملك or علم الظواهر, or just الظواهر يجب أن تتأسس على الآيات. الملك يجب أن يتأسس على الملكوت. النظر في الظواهر يجب should be predicated on reflection on al-ayat, because behind every dahira, every phenomenon, there is an ayah. Second one is the second axis on which he works, right? Pretty much to which he devoted much of his work, intellectual work, is approximation, the liberation of philosophical language, تحرير القول الفلسفي. So he works, for example, on logic and philosophy. He defends logic, being a logician himself. He defends logic, and he says that most of the Arab intellectuals today write in a pretty loose way, which does not regard or observe the rules of logic and the rules of hijaj. And here he harks back to Kalam, and he says that we should depend on the best methodology today in terms of which provides rigor and argumentability is al-munadara, ilm al-munadara, which has been one of the main characteristics of the Kalam tradition. Fabrication of concept. Gilles Deleuze says that the philosophy is mainly the fabrication of concepts, and he says that we still live on the concepts and survive on the concepts of others, and we so should I stop here just 1 minute? Okay, thank you. Right, the fabrication of concepts and authentic translation is one of the gates through which philosophy has been received is translation, but we tend to translate inauthentically. And he gives he just advances three modes of translation: tarjama tahsiliya, that is literal translation; communicative translation; and authentic translation, at-ta'siliya. The last point is the pragmatic approximation of philosophy in terms of the mode of language. I say ethics is the main gate of just the main should be the function of philosophy. So philosophy should be praxis oriented and should be geared towards benefit in this life and the hereafter. And finally, this is the last point with which I shall conclude. Right, there are three modes of, he says in the history of philosophy, three modes of questions, since philosophy is about questioning. The Socratic question, that is al-fahs al-Socrati, and the second one is the su'al naqdi by Kant, and he says it's high time that we initiate the third phase, which should be as-su'al al-mas'ul, as-su'al alladhi, the question which asks not about its object, but asks about its status as a question, and asks about the status of the questioner before all of that. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for taking 1 more minute or two from your time.
Thank you very much, Brother Munir. It's quite interesting to discuss Taha Abdul Rahman because he's tried to sort of reforms Kalam, the terms. I read some of the comments about the philosophy, and it's also affect the Kalam. Some people say that he is trying to reform the Kalam. So we finished the first round, and now we are in the question and answer session. We still have another perhaps 20 minutes to 25 minutes. So we open to the question and answers, and please address to the presenters whom you want to. Yes, this brother first, and then number 2, and Prof number 3. Yeah, please.
My question is to Brother Rafiq. It's alongside the comment I made yesterday concerning the theory that we should use Dembski's information theory model. So what you said at the end makes a lot of sense, that these people do these actions, they're interpreted in 2 different ways. Well, let's ask them what is their intention, right? In engaging in this practice, which I think makes a lot of sense. But why do we have to go to cultural anthropology to ask such a common sense question? I mean, we already knew إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ from the Prophet ﷺ. Why do we have to borrow Clifford Geer's model to understand a debate between Muslims?
Second one, please. We collect the question first.
Thank you. I have just 2 questions for Ustad Munir. The first one is that if philosophy is, by definition, a priori, it seems, Burhani and not Burhani. I assume that Burhani means with some degree of certainty, and Hijaji is kind of dialectical, argumentative, not certain. Presumably, he arrived at that conclusion using language and logic. So the very statement that it's Hijaji and not Burhani is also Hijaji, in which case it's like suspect in itself. I assume he wants some certainty for us to accept that notion of philosophy. And then in the second, there was the critique of the borrowing of concepts from other philosophers, this kind of taqlid. But in your talk, you mentioned 3 borrowings that he makes himself. The notion of philosophy as the fabrication of concepts from Deleuze, the notion of philosophy as Socratic questioning and the notion of philosophy as critique from Kant. And so it seems that he falls into the same problem that he accuses others of. My own comment would be, it doesn't really seem to matter where you get your concepts from. I think when it comes to philosophy, what matters is, are your arguments valid and sound, wherever you get them from. So, thank you.
Thank you, Munir. I just want to ask you, how can you compare between Taha Abdul Rahman and Muhammad Arkoon? Comparison, what do you think? How can you compare Taha Abdul Rahman and Muhammad Arkoon?
Any more? Any more questions? Yes, please.
Two questions. First to Mr. Rafiq. When we take the approach of Gilbert Ryle and Clifford Geertz, I'm afraid implementing the method from other discipline into the method of ta'abudi is somehow neglecting our own method in fiqh and usul al-fiqh. So, for example, we have this idea of al-ghayah la tubarrir al-wasila. Ends does not justify the means. So, perhaps you can elaborate further on using the method of understanding the context and intention. Does it contradict with usul al-fiqh method? Second to Mr. Munir, you're saying about philosophical nature is Hijazi, not Burhan, and he's criticizing the Arab philosophers using of Luzi language or flowery allegorical language. We have two kind of schools in Islamic philosophy. The first is Ibn Rushd, who argues that philosophy should be written in a Burhani way, while we have in another schools people like Ibn Tufail and Ibn Sina written philosophy, some part of it in an allegorical way. You have Hayy ibn Yaqzan in Ibn Tufail, and you have Ibn Sina Risalah Hayy ibn Yaqzan, Absal wa Salaman, and you have Al-Ghazali as well, Mishkatul Anwar, which is an allegorical interpretation of Surah An-Nur. So perhaps you can give comments on that. Thank you.
Any more? Oh yeah, please. Adi.
I get a feeling there's a lot of unnecessary complaint about borrowing from Dembski or from Geertz. I mean, the point is that unless you can show that that borrowing is wrong, unless the whole point is whether Dembski concept of so and so is wrong or invalid or inapplicable, then if you just reject an approach or method just because it comes from somebody else, then that same argument can be applied against classical Kalam, because Kalam borrowed a lot from the Greeks, like logic and from Plato and from Aristotle. Right, and in fact, in the Matalik we read Fawrazi say al-Imam al-Aflatun, see, and stuff like that. So I think the point is that unless we can show that a concept, whether borrowed or indigenous, unless we can show that concept is invalid or inapplicable or totally absurd, then we have no grounds to reject those concepts merely on the basis that it's come from outside, those called outside the tradition. But the tradition as such has been very critically integrative. Critically integrative of all concepts that are that can be shown to be sound. Thank you.
Okay, I think for the first round, I gave you around 3 minutes each. 3 minutes each, yeah? Brother Rafiq and Brad.
Okay, thanks for asking questions. First, I think my friend from Turkey asked whether we are going to ask what their intention is. No. My attempt is that to avoid unnecessary debates and hypes regarding the takfir on the base. Then before going to attribute or judge others' action, it is Islamic or non-Islamic, we have to do some researches, that is interpretation. Also, I cited so many examples from Islamic history that intention is the prime thing, not the overt behavior, what is manifested in the actor's behavior. That is not the yardstick to measure their iman or not. But what the actor intended, what the actor by going to a science tomb and by asking some other saint, by calling by the name of the other saints other than Allah, what his intention is. If he is not considering them or believing them they are not Rabb or Ilah, then there is no problem. That is my argument. I think now you are clear.
That's clear to me, and I agree, but why bring in gears? I mean, you can say what you're saying without talking about gears, right?
That's the same question asked by that guy. Along with the theory of the gears, I also brought so many examples from the Islamic history, Quran, Hadith. By incorporating all these things, I argue that this is the best way to give the meanings for the actions of the people, not only on the basis of solely on the basis of the Clifford Gears. Along with that, I mentioned that the incident of Safa Marwa and also the putting the Hazrul Aswad, the case of the Hazrul Aswad. In all these cases, what considered is that the intention, their intention, not the overt practices, but is manifested to us on the basis of the Hada Rabbi Hada Akbar, Ibrahim alayhi salam. His intention was not that, the son is not the God. But I think there is no danger in applying these types of laws into the studies of the sociology or anthropology of religion. Along with it, we have to take some examples from Islamic history also. I just only mentioned the case of the Clifford Gears. Along with that, we took so many. To what extent we could allege, attribute a takfir to others. I exemplified so many quotings from our ulama. Along with that, there was so many hadiths and quoted the Quran. By incorporating all these things, I argue that it is the best way to interpret it than explain.
Brother Munir, can you respond to the questions?
3 questions here. As for demonstration, okay, as I shall put it, okay, demonstration is about formal logic, right? So he said whatever is constructed in natural language isn't necessarily or should necessarily be of a dialectical nature. Because language is because of its embeddedness, and it is embodiness, right? Because it is embodied, it should be in dialectical language. One of the philosophers going back to allegories and Ibn Tufayl and Ibn Rushd, it says that Ibn Rushd seems to be the only or just one of the exceptional philosophers would emphasize that philosophy should be burhanic and whatever is dialectic is not yaqini. And it says, okay, all of the philosophical postulates, premises cannot be demonstrative, cannot be burhanic, right? They are premises are of constitutive nature. That is taqririya, and what is taqriri can be transcended or can be changed or substituted by other taqriri premise. So Ibn Rushd, you should look at his problem or just his tackling of this problem of demonstration in the context of his engagement of contemporary intellectuals who seem to call back or just invoke the peripatetic philosophers, mainly Muhammad Abd al-Jabir al-Jabiri, who just would invoke Ibn Rushd as a paradigm of universality of and the rationality of the philosophical discourse. So as for the consumption of concepts, maybe it is my fault because I didn't expand on that. He never assumes or never argues that we shouldn't borrow concepts from the others, and he does himself. There's what we should do rather is what he is against rather is blind consumption of other concepts. We said before we borrow concept, it says that the concept is composed of. We should know that the concept is composed of two elements or two components. The janib al-ibara, that is pure expression or representation, and janib al-ishara, that is metaphorical part. And what Muqallida tend to do is just they borrow now from Western philosophers the concept, borrowing both the representational aspect and the hidden or implicit metaphorical aspect, and they in this way they borrow the residues of the cultures of the other. It says we have to borrow the representational aspect, but build our metaphorical aspects our own. For example, he gives many examples. He himself deals with several concepts. For example, modernity, al-aql, ta'til, al-mafahim. He devoted one book. For one single book for the science. It says science of ta'til mafahim. This is which is absent from the minds, or just which is not tackled adequately by Muslims. Okay, both philosophers and other ways. So there's what we should build, right? He says that language is, or the concept is like a human being. Is a being, is a life being, which is composed of tabaqat. Now we should dig deep through the strata of language, because language bears the residue of tradition, bears the residue of our own being. Okay, Heidegger used to say the language is the house of being. So we have to, each culture, if it cannot philosophize authentically unless it goes back to the roots of language and explores the etymological, or builds istilahi or falsafi or conceptual problem, الجانب الاصطلاحي, the philosophical conceptual aspect on the etymological aspect. As for Arkun, he deals with Arkun, as far as I know, in two different occasions. One in his book تجديد الحوار تجديد الكلام, وصول الحوار وتجديد الكلام, and the other one when he in his book The Soul of Modernity, in which he tackles the problem touches on the problem of the hermeneutics of the Quran. But since I'm not knowledgeable about Arkun, I cannot answer this question, okay, because I personally, but I think his take on both Arkun and Jabri is that they approached tradition in an atomistic way, and they pick and choose from tradition. It says tradition is they are delving into contents of tradition and criticizing this and doing that and applying methodological aspects of which are borrowed from Western hermeneutics, which there is no wrong in that. But we should first, they said that first, methodologically speaking, they should subject those methodological these mechanisms and methodologies to critique before they apply them to tradition. And I said, for example, Muhammad al-Jabiri keeps repeating once again, time and again, that philosophy is burhanic, and mutakallimun, he called al-Janib al-Khatabi. So, Muhammad al-Jabiri, right, devised tradition. It says in tradition can be divided into three uquls, al-aql al-Arabi, this is the rational, which is demonstrative reason, which is represented by al-falasifa, the rational irrational, which is al-aql bayani, and with tafsir, ahl al-kalam, etc. These are rational, irrational. So they try to rationalize. They rationalized what is irrational, and the irrational, which is mutasawwifa, which under which he subsumes esotericism and mysticism and mutasawwifun, philosophical philosophy, etc., etc. So Taha Abdul Rahman says, no, this is not the way we should. And he says that Muhammad al-Jabiri himself writes in Hijazi, and Ibn Rushd himself, who keep talking about the Burhan, etc., and he dissects parts from Ibn Rushd's books, and to prove that Ibn Rushd himself writes in Hijazi, right? He cannot help escaping the Hijazi and the Khatabi argumentative way, and can never be committed to demonstration or to demonstrative language. Sorry.
The organizer, are you? No more questions. So the organizer has already warned us, and there is no more question. And I think we stop here. Thank you all the presenters, and big applause to them.
Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Wan Muhammad Azhar Muhammad Amin, for your moderating efforts. Alhamdulillah, we have the floor where we can express all our views and prepare ourselves with a logical answer, and this is what we need, alhamdulillah. Continuing on for the sixth panel, I would like to invite our moderator, Dr. Adiba Abdul Rahim, Associate Professor from the Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion. And we have only two presenters, Dr. Haslina and Muhammad Stodolski. Welcome.
Can I have both presenters to proceed to the front seats? Thank you. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Honorable professors, distinguished guests, paper presenters, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I welcome you to the second session of panel discussion or panel presentation for the third day of Kliks 3, the third Kuala Lumpur International Kalam Symposium. So Alhamdulillah, for this session, we feel honored to have with us today the two promising scholars who will inshallah continue discussing other dimensions or other issues related to Ilmul Kalam, which we consider as continuation with what we have gone through for the past 3 days. So like the previous sessions, each presenter will be given 20 minutes, okay? And we will allocate another 30 minutes for Q&A session. So before we begin, allow me to mention a very brief info about our first presenter. She is our beloved Dr. Haslina bint Ibrahim. She doesn't want me to give a long intro about her. Okay, she is my colleague, a good friend of mine, and many of you know that she's one of the key persons behind the Kliks. Okay. So Dr. Haslina bint Ibrahim, she's currently Associate Professor at the Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion, Kuala of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia. So her current research topics involve the tradition of Kalam and interreligious discourse. Her academic interests lie primarily in comparative theology and religious pluralism. Her topic of presentation today will be Kalam and the diverse approaches in the study of religion, Ibn Hazm, Al-Biruni, and Shahrastani. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Haslina to present her speech. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Dr. Adiba. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Before I carry on with my presentations, I have three things to highlight. First of all, the paper presentation today is one of my findings for a research titled The Relevance of Kalam to Comparative Religion, which I have attempted for about a year ago. I would like to thank International Islamic University for giving me the generous fund, as well as providing me the good period for my sabbatical. And thank you also to EC for having me as a visiting scholar. At the moment, and a number of members, academic members from public universities in Malaysia are working on a book on Kalam and comparative religion. We have managed to secure about 7 or 8 articles. Inshallah, we are going to publish a book. I promised Dr. Amran before Kliks 3, but I'm very unfortunate. I am still looking for a few more articles for the publication, inshallah. And thirdly, the reason why I attempted this research, having been trained in Usuluddin, I would say that I'm not so having so profound knowledge, but Alhamdulillah, having been trained in Usuluddin and coming to IIUM when the department decided to have comparative religion as part of the program, I come to a conclusion that a Muslim cannot do comparative religion without Usuluddin. So that has actually triggered my curiosity for this topic. And when Dr. Amran came to me a few years back, deliberating on the possibility of doing the discourse on Kalam, I thought that is, match to my interest. And here I am. So the objectives of my paper, even though if you look at the topic, you may think that it's quite ambitious for me to talk about 3 giants of comparative religion of Kalam, but that was because this was my engagement in the research. But I'll share some parts of my findings. So first of all, I would like to justify the feasibility of the Kalam method in the study of religions. I will tell you why. Secondly, I will highlight, some of the argumentations attempted by the 3 giants in their works to show how Kalam is how Kalam address the problems of religions. And the third one is, of course, to promote Kalam in the contemporary Muslim scholarships of religions. Okay, why is it that I think it's a big deal for me to justify that Kalam is important as a method to understand or to study religions, and what actually the problem with Kalam? Well, it is not really a problem, though I put the problem. The issue is, if you talk about comparative religion, this discipline is developed in the modern Western context, and it talks a lot about objectivity, fair, neutrality, unbiased study of religions. I've mentioned this in the previous Kliks. So my hurdle when doing comparative religion and Usuluddin is that if you go to the works of Usuluddin and scholars of Kalam, there's a lot of criticisms, commentaries, debates, jidal against the doctrines of other religions. So how is it possible for Muslim students, Muslims who do comparative religion, to reconcile between the two, because at the one hand, the discipline of comparative religion requires you to be neutral, to be fair, to be objective. Talking about objectivity, there is also another discourse about whether it is possible to conduct an objective study of other religions. Obviously, if you look at Kalam, and taking from that perspective of objectivity, it's very impossible, because all the times we are going to be very judgmental. Ismail Raji Faruqi discusses a lot in his works, and I think he's one of the best person who managed to overcome these problems of objectivity. At least he has one significant contribution in overcoming this problem of objectivity. He wrote the book titled Christian Ethics and its quintessence, Christian Ethics. Okay, now the problem here is because for example, Jake Swardenberg, in his book titled Muslim Perceptions of Other Religions, he has actually written a number of books on Muslim scholarships of religion, and he said this. Yeah, he said that, for example, the first one said the study of other religions to the Muslims is very polemical. He said the study of religions in itself could not, however, be seen as something very useful for Islam and the Muslim community, except for apologetic or polemical purposes. So he said that Muslim scholarships of religion is very apologetic and polemical. And second, he said, when we study other religions, we have to be normative, and this is a hurdle. He said, none, with exception to Al-Biruni, somehow he acknowledged Al-Biruni, of which I think he has misunderstood Al-Biruni, none of the books discussed were written exclusively for the sake of knowledge of the religion in question. The religion is put within an interpretive framework, and the author draws his conclusions with the aim of somehow distinguishing good from bad. This is very much what we have been doing. It's normative. And thirdly, he said that when Muslims do comparative religion, we try to exert the sense of superiority of Islam over other religions. So he said, the very existence of other religious community which absolutized their truth and doctrines contradicted the claims of superiority of the Muslims community. Because we feel we are superior, so we study other religions. And he said also that the reason why Muslims get so much engaged with other religions because they were very much driven by the Muslim Christians polemic. So this gave me a lot of motivation to study whether, well, at least these three giants, were they very polemical? Were they normative? Were they able to be fair in their treatment to other religions? Why I pick up these three? Because they were more or less contemporaries, even though they were in different contexts, coming from different contexts. You know, the Ibn Hazm in Andalus, and then Al-Biruni in Khawarizmi, and Shahristani in Afghanistan now, in Central Asia or Iran. So more or less different contexts, but they have also quite similar challenges. For example, Ibn Hazm was living in very pluralistic society. It was not very harmony political situation during his time. They were also, by his time, sectarians among the Muslims, especially in Aqidah, Mazahibul Aqidah. And Al-Biruni was in India. At that point of time, Muslims were having very hostile attitudes to the Hindus. Yeah. Okay, now let us look at how these scholars claim what they interested to do in their study. For example, Ibn Hazm, he has no reservation. He's very straightforward. He said, what did he say? I'm going to study and I'm going to use my sensorial premises. So he's using an empirical approach. Sensorial means he going to do observations, and look at the experience of the Christians or of the religions that he studied. He mainly studied Judaism and Christianity, apart from other religions. And also he said that we did this in accordance with establishment of such proof which do not contradict the origin from which they are derived. So therefore he studied the Bible and the Torah to address his criticism. And of course he said we have excessively engaged in verbal description and in giving up convolution. So he has dialogue. He asked people, the Christians and the Jews, for their opinions, their deliberations. So, okay, I'll discuss about his method later. Now, what about Al-Biruni? Al-Biruni said that my book is not polemical. My book is nothing but a simple historical record of fact. And then Shahrustani said that these are what I can achieve from the sayings of the experts. It means that he also contacted people of religions, discuss with them, deliberate and get information from them. And I have quoted as they are. If you do comparative religion, you know that this is one important criteria in comparative religion, to be able to get the information from the sources and to communicate them as they are, to understand the religion as it is, which means that you are not expected to put your perspective on the religions under study. Now, in general, I'm so sorry for the very small font there, but that's the best I can do, having no technical background. So if you look at Ibn Hazm, Al-Biruni, and Al-Shahrustani, I categorize their work as such. Ibn Hazm, of course, his work is theological and polemical, very polemical, and he outstands the rest because he adopted biblical criticism method. And with regard to Al-Biruni, even though Wardenberg say that he's not very, he's not polemical, but no one can deny that he study religions at the plane of theology. His is not polemical, but I will show to you, even though he said that he's not polemical, but he did share his perspective and criticism. And modern scholars of religions praise Al-Biruni as a method as very objective, and regard that he subscribed to the phenomenological method. Today, phenomenological method is one of the widely accepted method in the Western and modern study of religions. And finally, Shahrustani, of course, he adopted theological method, less polemical. So he tried to, it is called, he tried to do a encyclopedic approach to the religions. The next one, where is the pointer? So the next, the second level of the table, talking or mentioning the religions under study. You can see there are, a number of religions. I think the three scholars did not leave any religion behind, which means that they study Christianity, Judaism, Sabians, Magians, Hindus, Brahmins. But I would like to highlight the third level. That's why it's quite light in color. Ibn Hazm also criticized Muslim sectarians. He criticized the Ash'arites. He criticized the Mu'tazilah. He criticized the philosophers. Al-Biruni also discussed Muslim festivals and compared the Muslim festivals to the Indian or to the Hindus festivals. And Shahrustani also discussed these groups or sectarian within the Muslims. So you see, the Muslim scholarship of religions is not only focused on other religions as well, but also the intra-religions in their presentations. What about the approaches? Sorry for the font again. Now, the book written by Ibn Hazm, I think everybody knows the book, but for the purpose of precision, he wrote Faslul Kitab Al-Fisal fi Al-Milal wa An-Nihal. Whether you read Al-Fisal or Al-Faslu, so scholars have given their opinion. Al-Faslu means a compilation of sections and chapters, and some scholars read his title as Al-Faslu, which carries the meaning of distinction between true and false. Both are applicable. And I think all of you know of his approach. He's a Zahirite. He depends on textual, literal, and linguistic approach. Nevertheless, he subscribed to empirical method. He used common sense. He used logic. Of course, dialectical, but very systematic. He used the authentic scripture available during his time when criticizing the Bible. He criticized Asharites and Mu'tazilites alike, the philosophers as well as the mystics, because he thought that these Secretarians, they understand the revealed text only by human means, not literally, the way he adopted it in his approach. And he was aggressive in his approach, and this is understandable because the time that he was living, it was the time during the fall of Umayyah, and political instability and pluralistic society and the challenges from the Christians and the Jews. His work is an outstanding contribution to the critics of Bible. He commented that the Bible is lack of coherence. He questioned on the authorship of the Bible, on its authenticity issues, and he argued on the divinity and the doctrine held by the elders of the church. So let's take a look at one of the example. So in his discussions, one of his discussion, he described the Jews living during his time in his context. So he divided them into five groups. But he has also a major division of the Jews. One, those who denied abrogation. And the other one, okay, this is too small. And the other one group that denied accepted abrogation, but denied its possibility. So one group totally rejected abrogation, another group accepted, but they believe that it couldn't happen. Why? They believe it couldn't happen because they do not accept the idea that God changed his mind. Yeah. However, here in the blue box, I put the citation from Ibn Hazm, saying that it is possible for God, if he wanted to change his mind, because it is his supremacy and his credibility and authority. So he is citing from the Quran. So he was citing from the Quran when he rejected the Jewish denial of abrogation. And then he took from the Bible, from the Torah, what is it? He justified it taking from the Torah. I'm sorry, it is not there. I don't know where is it. So for example, he said in Leviticus, chapter 18, verse 18, there was an account that Jacob married Leah and Rachel. But this was prohibited later. Like earlier on, polygamy was made possible in the Jewish law, but later on it was stopped or it was prohibited. And there was also the problem of the instruction from God to Moses in Deuteronomy, in which God instructed Moses to demolish the local people. But then when the local people approached Musa alayhi salam and offer a treaty of peace, he accepted it. And then God decided that, okay, you need not to punish them. So this is recorded in Joshua chapter 9 verse 27. So these are the examples of why is it that God changed his mind in the Torah. And Ibn Hazm criticized that abrogation do take place or does take place in the Torah, and it is not like what the Jews have been claiming, that it is impossible. The next one, this is it, sorry. Al-Biruni. Now, I think for those who studied Biruni, you are also aware of his methods and approaches, how he is very prominent. What is his name? So Al-Biruni, for example, when he studied the Hindus, he took the initiative to be in the counter of the Hindus. In his work, he explained that he took a lot of efforts to learn the language of Sanskrit. It was very difficult for him, but because he wanted to understand Hinduism the way it is, so he took all the effort to understand Hinduism. Now let's also share with you one of the examples of which he took from the scripture, from the Mahabharata. Well, actually, he took from many texts, Hindu texts. For example, the idea of God, as cited in Patanjali, in Bhagavad Gita, and in Samkhya, these definitions of God were clashed to each other. They were not coherent. And for example, he said some group of Hindus, they believe in God of abstraction. Another group believe in anthropomorphism. So he said that the educated group is inclined to understand God in abstraction, and the uneducated group is comfortable to understand God with personalities, taking God as personal. So, and what I'm trying to highlight is this one. In his work, even though we saw just now that it seems that he did not criticize, or he tried not to be polemical in his approach, but he did criticize. So, for example, when in one of the discussion, the Hindu said God is just like a point, and they deliberated that the God of this point is about 12 fingers long and 10 fingers broad. So he said, indirectly, he said, Ta'ala anit tahdid wa ta'did. God is above this criteria. I'll skip the rest of the page because I want to, I'm sorry I cannot discuss Shahrastani, but I hope you understand what I mean. I'm trying to show you, to demonstrate you the examples from the three prominent scholars. So this is my discussion. Okay. If you can follow my argumentation just now, I'm trying to show to you that there is no single approach in Kalam, even though we thought that they are generally polemical, they are normative, so on and so forth. But if you look into more details, you find that there is no single method in Kalam in understanding religions. And as a matter of fact, the way Muslim scholars conducted their study of religions are just like the modern scholars, because they go to the sources, they do the field work, they do the observation, the critics, but they are also very rich in providing the argumentations, which is, and this is not done by the modern scholars. What else? Now, the Muslim scholars also is different because, different from the modern scholars in the sense that they do not look at religion and revelation as incompatible. They can justify on purely rational and logical grounds, and they take from the revelation as well. They rely heavily on scriptural texts of religions, and they take the scriptures as the ultimate authority of religion. And that's why you see why Al-Biruni and Ibn Hazm, for example, go to the direct sources and put their criticism. Okay, this is my next argument. If you look into the way the Muslims conducted their the study of religions in comparison to the modern approaches, is that whenever the Muslims study religions, they started off with this Tawhidic idea. They take from an integrated understanding of religion that, you know, God tells man about him, tells man about religion, and also man is actively involved in the process. Man tries to understand, man tries to make sense, use his senses to further understand religion. But the modern approaches is different in the sense that they take that human understanding of religion as merely experiential, if you know, on top of rational. So rational and experiential. So we do not know whether, you know, God up there is communicating to us, or, you know, at which level of communication, whether this communication is important or not important. So that's why you see the modern scholars of religions now resolve into different approaches, historical approaches, anthropological approaches, sociological approaches, psychological approaches, because religions are perceived as mere experience. But from the perspective of Islam, from the approach taken by ulama Kalam in the past, you know, religion is taken at the level of revelation, at the level of experience, and both are very dynamic relationship. So that is the reason why Muslims have to adopt a normative approach towards the study. So I guess I don't have enough time. Let me conclude my presentation. Please excuse me if I have to read to make sure that I am able to synthesize what I'm trying to explain today. So Kalam has greatly contributed in defense of religious truth, even at the plane of interreligious encounter. Despite its polemical and apologetic outlook, the Kalam tradition is strongly built upon rational, empirical, and metaphysical tools. The revisit of Kalam is urgent not only to Muslims intellectuals, but also anyone involved in interreligious discourse, since Kalam is loaded with intellectual vocation that deters dogmatism in religion. In the context of Abrahamic religions, it is crucial that theology and Kalam being its component to be taught, not only to the Muslims, as well as to the Christians and to the Jews, and applied in the contemporary study of religions. The fear that Kalam nurture biasness should cease, as it was in Kalam that the Abrahamic theologians developed their interreligious discourses with intellectual openness and veracity. Kalam being the discipline that reconciles Islamic tradition with the Greek and the Christian traditions, Christian intellectual philosophy, has showcased the flexibility of Islam in accepting goods from other traditions and civilizations. Even the Jewish intellectualism could not resist the subtlety of Kalam. In addition, intellectual openness, which is sought after in the discipline of comparative religion, is, in fact, the trait of theology, and Kalam Without intellectual openness, there can never exist a collection of theological treatises written by the Abrahamic theologians in defense of their religious truth. Intellectual exercise and intellectual veracity are crucial in theology, for otherwise the notion of God will fall into dogmatism. scholarly revisions on the definition of intellectual openness and objectivity, the one that I mentioned earlier, are direly needed, for otherwise the legacies of theology in the study of religions will remain marginalized despite the foundational role it has played in the early history of interreligious encounter. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Haslina Ibrahim, for enlightening us with a very informative point just now. Ladies and gentlemen, let us move to the second presenter for today. He is Dr. Mohammed Volkan Yildiran. Okay, Dr. Mohammed Volkan Yildiran Slodolski. I apologize if I wrongly pronounce your name. It's hard to me actually. He received his undergraduate education at Baptist College, graduating summa cum laude with honors in history. He completed his Master of Philosophy degree in Classical and Medieval Islamic History at Oxford University, inshallah. At the University of Chicago, he studied at the Department of Near Eastern Languages and Civilization, completing an MA degree and his PhD dissertation, which was recently accepted with honors. He is currently a faculty member at Darul Qasim, Chicago. Okay, and focuses in his current research on Maturidi Kalam, Hanafi law, and Islamic bioethics. So he will present today under the topic of the concept of the inherently good and bad in Maturidi Kalam and its implication for the hereafter. فليتفضل.
السلام عليكم. استعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. اللهم صل على عبدك ورسولك النبي الأمي سيدنا محمد المصطفى خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وأتباعهم أجمعين وبعد. I would like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of his blessings, and may peace and blessings be upon our messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of his creation. I would also like to thank the Islamic University of Malaysia and Kalam Research and Media, and also the Malaysian people for their graceful hospitality and for this conference. Yeah. Before I read my paper, I want to very briefly, with your permission, talk about two issues that were mentioned repeatedly in the conference, which is the big question of what is Kalam and what should its role be, and the other one is this usage of non-Islamic concepts and models in our discussions. So as regards the first, there were two basic alternatives. One is what the تقرير العقيدة الإسلامية بالأدلة اليقينية الوحية والعقلية والحسية, which was what establishing and corroborating the Islamic creed with proofs based on revelation, reason, and empirical knowledge. And the other one was a more broad, general approach of studying all of reality under one science. Now, I have to be completely honest in this. That's just not going to work. And that's why I think we saw the disintegration of Kalam as a united discipline. And also disintegration of philosophy in the West. In the sense that philosophy in the beginning included math and physics and everything else, but you can't study all of reality under one science. And so I think we need to be more specific and more focused. Not that every knowledge is useful and beneficial, inshallah, but that means we cannot study all of reality under one platform from a pragmatic perspective. So that's why I prefer the first definition, that Kalam should be establishing and corroborating the Islamic creed with proofs from revelation, reason, and empirical knowledge. So the key word there is what? That it should be an ilm, and it should be based on yaqeen. Right? Ilm means what? Knowledge, but not any knowledge. Right? Because there is probability, as you know, there is jahil, there is wahm, there is shak, there is what? Dhan, and there is yaqeen. Right? There is ignorance, there is speculation, there is doubt, there is probability, and there is certain knowledge. And what we seek in our creed is what? Certain knowledge. Not that other types of knowledge or other types of thinking are not useful, but this is what we focus on. And this is what our deen has to be based on. And so, with that said, and I mean this is a constructive criticism, not as a destructive criticism, in the last couple of days I felt like I've been taking a safari in a swamp of speculation. Meaning you cannot possibly study quantum physics and social anthropology and psychology and neuroscience seriously in one platform. And you can present papers, but you can't have quality control. To have quality control, we need experts in those particular fields, deliberating, discussing those issues, right? But those are all very specialized fields. Otherwise, we cannot have quality control. We cannot have constructive criticism, so on and so forth. So I think that this is what the Kalam should focus on. And this is not to say that we should destroy bridges, but it's rather to say what? That Kalam shouldn't be a rubber stamp for every other science in the world. Kalam all should be the study of Usuluddin, and any Muslim endeavor must be firmly based upon the Usuluddin, but Kalam cannot study everything at once from a practical point of view. Right. And as regards the issue mentioned by, I think my comments were misunderstood regarding borrowing from non-Islamic civilizations, borrowing non-Islamic concepts. So I think there are three approaches here, two extreme approaches and the middle path. The extreme approaches is to reject everything or to accept everything. And there's the Islamic approach, which is the middle path, meaning if you can show us it's valuable, it's beneficial, then we'll accept it. But we shouldn't take anything just for the sake of taking. We shouldn't imitate anyone just for the sake of imitation. If you can show that knowledge from another civilization is indeed useful, let's take it by all means. Al-hikmetu da'alatul muslim, right? But it shouldn't be that certain concept is just fashionable in some field, so let's just take it and rubber stamp it with Kalam. That has no depth to it, there is no benefit to it. Right? The Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of the Ditch used the technology of ditch, which was a Persian technology, right? Because there's a benefit for Muslims, right? If we look at Imam Ghazali and what he did, right? What was happening at this time? There were again two extremes, and he was the middle path. One extreme said what? Let's reject logic. Let's not, studying logic is impermissible. There was another approach of the Neoplatonic philosophers, which was what? To take both logic and Neoplatonic philosophy and rubber stamp it with Islam. And there was the middle path, which is what? Logic is something beneficial. It's good, it's useful, like math. So let's use it. But Neoplatonic metaphysics, it's unnecessary, we don't need it. So, plus it's contrary to Islam, so we abandon it. So that's what I was trying to say. I'm not saying let's reject any knowledge from a different civilization. I'm just saying, let's take only things that are concretely beneficial. Okay, so I'll go back to my paper, inshallah. All right. The topic of my paper, the concept of the inherently good and bad in the Hanafi Maturidi school and its implications for the hereafter. The Hanafi Maturidi school perceives the good and bad and their relation to reason and revelation in a way that is different than the better known positions of the Ash'ari school and the Mu'tazili sect. The Hanafi Maturidi jurisprudence analyzed the issue in the section on the imperative in works of Islamic jurisprudence. One of the most extensive discussions of the issue is in Sadr al-Shari'ah's At-Tawdih, together with Taftazani's gloss At-Talwih, on which the following is largely based. The key question is whether a command in revelation necessitates and determines that what is commanded is good, or requires and indicates it. Here, indicator, delil, refers to something the knowledge of which necessitates knowledge of something else, such as smoke indicating fire. If the divine command requires and indicates rather than determines that what is commanded is good, this means that it does not cause something to be inherently good, just as the smoke does not cause fire. Before we discuss the Ash'ari, Mu'tazili, and Maturidi positions, we must first identify what is meant by the concepts of good and bad. Jurisprudence observed that the good and bad, in Arabic al-husn wal-qubuh, literally the beautiful and the ugly, are used in three meanings. The first consists of that which is in accordance with one's nature or repugnant to it, such as happiness and sadness. The second consists of the attributes of accomplishment or deficiency, such as knowledge and ignorance. The third consists of those attributes which are praiseworthy or blameworthy, such as obedience to Allah and disobedience. According to the Hanafi jurisprudence, there is agreement among all Muslim theologians that the good and the bad in the first two senses can be determined by reason. Since one can say without revelation, for example, that those things which a sound nature lacks are good, or that knowledge is better than ignorance. The debate concerns good and bad in the third sense of being praiseworthy or blameworthy in this world and deserving reward and punishment in the hereafter. The Ash'aris believe that the divine command and not reason determines what is good. Whatever revelation commands is good, and whatever it prohibits is bad, independent of reason. Hence, to know what is good or bad, one needs to be aware of revelation. Reason is only a tool for understanding revelation. An action becomes good because Allah commands it, not that Allah commands it because it is good. According to the Mu'tazila, reason determines what is good and bad. This is because of their distinctive creed that doing what is best for his slaves is obligatory upon God. Since it is reason that determines that doing the best is an obligation upon God, and God decides whether actions are good or bad. According to this obligation, it is reason that determines the good and the bad, and revelation plays no role in this. According to the Hanafi Maturidi jurisprudence, it is Allah who determines what is good and bad, and so what is inherently good and bad is good and bad independent of revelation. Allah determines the good and bad, and He has created in humans the faculty of reason by which one can understand that some actions are inherently good or bad. This is different from the Ash'ari position in affirming that one can learn that some actions are inherently good or bad through reason prior to and independent of revelation, just as one learns it through revelation, whereas the Ash'ari say good and bad can only be known after revelation and the sending of a prophet. In other words, according to the Maturidis, once Allah determines an action as good or bad, the human being has two means of knowledge of this, reason and revelation. Whereas according to Ash'aris, there is only one source, which is revelation. Maturidis argue that revelation indicates that some actions are inherently good rather than causing them to be good. Thus, the action itself or its attribute is good or bad. The Maturidi position is also distinctive from the Mu'tazili approach in two respects. First, the Hanafi Maturidi jurisprudence, like all Sunni theologians, reject that anything is obligatory upon God, including the obligation of doing the best. Hence, reason does not dictate what is good and bad, but rather Allah decides this, and Allah has created reason in humans so that they are able to perceive that some actions are inherently good and others are inherently bad. The second difference with the Mu'tazilis is on how we obtain knowledge of the good and bad through reason. According to Mu'tazilis, reason necessitates that knowledge that something is good or bad through tawleed, generation of actions. Generation means that an action occurs from its doer through the intermediary of another action. Mu'tazilis think
that one can do an action either directly with volition or through an intermediary action, in which case the final action is generated. For instance, the movement of the hand is direct, but the movement of the key that the hand holds is generated. Hence, one can stop direct movement, but cannot stop the generated movement once the direct movement has taken place. Mu'tazilis think that reason generates knowledge of the goodness or evil of an action through the intermediary of sound reflection that consists of obtaining conclusions through the logical treatment of premises. All Sunni theologians reject the doctrine of generation because they believe that Allah is the immediate creator of everything that exists, including every action, based on the ayah that is mentioned repeatedly in the Quran, that Allah is the creator of everything, and the ayah, Estaizubillah, Wallahu khalaqakum wa ma ta'amelun, Allah created you and your action. Therefore, the process through which reason obtains knowledge of the inherently good and bad is different according to Hanafi Maturidi jurisprudence from the Mu'tazili doctrine of generation. Reason does not generate knowledge of the good and bad. Rather, reason is an instrument for knowing the goodness and evil of some actions, since reason does not grasp these attributes in many things that Allah rules, awareness of which is dependent upon the messengers conveying the revelation, such as the number of units in salat, the specific times of certain acts of worship, etc. However, Allah has given reason the ability to perceive the goodness and evil of some actions, not through generation, but by ordinarily creating the knowledge of the good or bad after sound reflection. Meaning that it is not impossible for this knowledge not to be created after sound reflection, since ordinary creation means the repetition of an action and its occurrence in all or most cases without necessity. Hanafi jurisprudence present arguments based on naql and aql, transmission and thought, in favor of this view. As regards transmission, one proof is the verse, Estaizubillah, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan wa ita'i dhil kurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'izukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Indeed, Allah commands justice and excellence and giving to relatives, and forbids obscenity, the reprehensible, and rebellion. He guides you so that you remember. Sadr al-Sharia observes in at-Tawdih that this requires that the action is just and good before the command, and it was commanded only because it was good. However, since the goodness of the action may be unclear to some, Allah makes this manifest by the command in revelation. Other ayat also indicate the same concept. Estaizubillah, وَإِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً قَالُوا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا وَاللَّهُ أَمَرَنَا بِهَا قُلْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَأْمُرُ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ أَتَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ قُلْ أَمَرَ رَبِّي بِالْقِسْطِ. If they do something obscene, they say, we found our forefathers doing it, and Allah commanded it to us. Say, indeed, Allah does not command obscenity. Do you say upon Allah that which you do not know? Say, my Lord commands what is just. The obscene action the revelation is referring to is doing tawaf of the Kaaba naked, something polytheists defended as the custom of their forefathers, and even ascribed this to Allah's command. Anyone who is reasonable can perceive that this action is obscene. The action is obscene in itself. It did not become obscene because of revelation, as Ash'aris would claim, but rather it was obscene to begin with, and revelation prohibited it because it was obscene. Likewise, Allah commands doing the inherently good because it is just, not that it was a neutral action that became just by Allah's command. As for arguments based on reason, the Hanafi Maturidi jurisprudence considers the obligation of believing in the message of the prophets. If believing in the prophet of a prophet is an obligation based upon revelation, this leads to the logical fallacy of a circular argument. Meaning, you believe the prophet because of revelation, and you believe the revelation because of the prophet. In more detail, when a prophet commands an action, such as an act of worship, after claiming to be a prophet and demonstrating the truth of his claim through a miracle, if it is not obligatory for the hearer of the command to obey the command, then there is no benefit in sending a prophet. If it is necessary to follow the prophet's command, then this must be either because of a reason, which is what is apparent, or due to revelation. If it is based on a previous revelation, then we ask the same question of the prior revelation. If this is also based on a prior revelation, this would lead to infinite regrets, and if it's based on a later revelation, it would lead to a circular argument. By this disjunctive syllogism, Sadr Sharia proves that believing a prophet who demonstrates the truth of his claim of prophethood through a miracle is an obligation originally based on reason, not revelation. Since it is an obligation based on reason, it will be good based on reason. Since an obligation based on reason is something the doing of which is praiseworthy and the rejection of which is blameworthy. Right. As for providing the category of what's inherently bad, Sadr Sharia writes that the obligation of believing the prophets is based upon the prohibition of lying. If the prohibition is based upon revelation, the argument again becomes circular. Since this cannot be the case, the prohibition of lying is based on reason, which necessitates that lying is bad based originally on reason. Based on these arguments, relying on transmission and thought, Hanafi jurisprudence reject the Ash'ari claim that what is good and bad is solely determined through revelation. As for the Mu'tazili claim that reason determines what is good or bad, rather than being an instrument for understanding these qualities that are determined by Allah, we saw this claim was based on the doctrine that doing what is best for his slaves is obligatory upon Allah. All Sunni theologians reject this doctrine, and one of the most concise and convincing rejections is that of Taftazani in Sharh al-Aqaid. He says that obligation either means that one who does not do it deserves punishment, which is impossible for Allah, or it means that it is necessary for one to do something without choice, which, as is well known, was the doctrine of the Neoplatonic philosophers who supposed that God is the creator by necessity, whereas all Muslims, including the Mu'tazilis, believe that Allah is the creator by choice, both because not being able to choose is a deficiency that is not befitting of the perfection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and because of the ayah, وَرَبُّكَ يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ. Your Lord creates what He wills and chooses. Thus, through the logical argument form called reductio ad absurdum, in Arabic, butlan al-malzum bi butlan al-lazim, Taftazani rejects the Mu'tazili claim that doing what is best is an obligation upon Allah. After arguing that both the Ash'ari and Mu'tazili positions lead to contradictions, and that transmission and thought corroborates the Hanafi Maturidi position, Hanafi Maturidi jurisprudence begin classifying actions according to their good and bad attributes. According to this classification, the good is of three types. The first is that which is good in itself, which means the mind comprehends its goodness without recourse to something else, something outside it. Right. This first category is subdivided into two, those obligations that never fall and those that might fall at times. The latter is subdivided into two as well, those in which the obligation falls actually but not in its attribute of goodness, and those in which the obligation may fall in actuality along with the attribute of being good. The example of the first is believing in Allah, the obligation of which never falls, since if it did, it would be disbelief and the ungratefulness to our Creator. The example of the second is affirmation with the tongue, the obligation of which falls when there is threat to life or limb. Although the actual obligation falls under compulsion, the attribute of goodness is still there, such that if in this case the Muslim shows patience, he becomes a martyr. The example of that which is good in itself, in which the obligation may fall both in actuality and attribute, is salat. It is good in itself because it is the glorification and expression of gratefulness to our Creator, who blesses us with so many blessings. But the obligation falls for females in the state of menstruation and postpartum bleeding, and the attribute of goodness falls in performing the salat in repugnant times. The second category of good is that which is not good in itself or for another factor, but is joined with the first category, the example of which is zakat. In itself, it is just giving away one's wealth, but becomes good because of an external factor, which is helping the need of the poor. But since poverty is through the creation of Allah, it is as if it becomes good directly and becomes joined with what is good in itself. The third category is that which is good due to an external factor, which is subdivided into two, that in which the good is not performed by the action, and that in which it is performed by the action. The example of the first is ablution. It is not good in itself because this is just cooling one's limbs by washing, but is good due to something outside of itself, which is being able to perform salat. However, salat is not performed by ablution, but by the actions done after it. The examples of the second are jihad and hudud punishments, both of which involve hurting Allah's creation, but the former is good because it is for ila kalimatullah, the elevation of the word of Allah, and defending Muslims from attacks, and the second is good because it stops people from disobedience, which are things that are outside of these actions but are done through them.
The classification of actions into good and bad in of themselves, meaning by reason or due to revelation, has a number of legal, creedal, and eschatological consequences, all of which cannot be discussed in this forum. So we will focus on the eschatological consequences. Are there any actions that cannot take place in paradise? How do we explain that some things that are not permissible according to revealed law in this life will become permissible in paradise according to the same source of revelation? The Maturidi classification of actions into good and bad by reason and revelation provides consistent and cogent answers to these questions. The Hanafi jurisprudence maintain that those actions that are bad in themselves cannot possibly exist in paradise, such as disbelief, ungratefulness, arrogance, evil doing, such as killing, stealing, lying, etc. However, those things whose prohibition is not based on reason but on transmission can exist in paradise. This answers the question of how things that are prohibited for all people, such as drinking wine, and those things that are prohibited for Muslim males alone, such as wearing gold, silver, and silk, are among the blessings of Jannah. Finally, we should note that the Hanafi Maturidi position on the inherently good and bad may be beneficial in dialogues with non-Muslims on morality. If one starts from the Ash'ari premise that revelation alone determines what is good and bad, this seems to end any possibility of a dialogue on morality with anyone who rejects revelation. However, if we accept that every impartial human being has the capacity to understand through reason that some actions are inherently good and others are inherently bad, this leaves the door open for a common moral language with non-Muslims that may lead them to understand the wisdom of revelation through reason. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Volkan. It seems to us that both presenters have presented very interesting topics. Dr. Haslina has highlighted various approaches of Muslim theologians. Ibn Hazm, Al-Biruni, Ash-Shahrastani in their discourse of other religions, and how they adopted Kalam as one of the most prominent methods in the study of religions. And in doing so, she tried to explore the role and the contribution of Kalam in the study of religion. What I observed from her presentation just now, I understand that she tried to claim that she mentioned just now about the modern scientific study of comparative religion, which focused on objectivity, somehow has made Muslims giving less appreciation for Kalam. Okay, so Dr. Haslina has suggested to revive Kalam in the Muslim contemporary scholarship of religion. So we should not discredit Kalam lah. Okay, in the study of comparative religion. So I understand that she saw the necessary relationship between two disciplines of Kalam and comparative religion. And Dr. Muhammad Volkan Yildirim just now discussed about the he analyzed the Maturidi position on the inherently good and bad, and showed its influence on the legal discussion of apostasy in Islamic law. He discussed about the difference between Maturidi and Ash'ari and Mu'tazilat's position on the concept of vehemently good and bad, and he associated it with the Al-Maturidi's position with the views of Hanafi jurists. Actually, we are yet to come to the question and answer session, because I was just informed by the organizer just now that we have one additional presenter for this session. I supposed to have it in the afternoon, but was brought forward for this session. So we're glad to have, Mr. Muharrab Hudiban Arishdi. So allow me just to give a very brief info about him. Mr. Muharrab Hudiban Arishdi is currently reading his data science at the King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals, where he focuses on Cosmo-Kalam. Cosmo-Kalam. It's something new to me lah. Okay, a computer-aided analysis of Kalam structures. His main fields of interest are data science applications and artificial intelligence. So He will present his paper today under the title, The Cosmo Kalam Platform, a computer-aided analysis of Kalam structure. So I welcome, yeah, okay, you are here already. فليتفضل.
Yes. It's not working. See? طيب. طيب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I would like to say thanks to the organizers and the sponsor of this conference. Such a brilliant event wouldn't happen without the time, dedication, and support of everyone involved. I would like also to express my deep thanks to Prof. Dr. Muhammad Basel Al-Ta'i for his collaboration and contribution to brought up this project to the scientific level. I must say it is an honor to be invited to speak here today. It is a great opportunity for all to showcase of their research and discover others and discover what others are creating. Being involved in the Kalam conference has enabled me to understand the importance of encouragement, gaining exposure, and further insight into Kalam, which can help to drive focus, ambitions, and lead to the achievement of our goals. Henry Ford says, if you do what you always did, you will get what you always got. We cannot renew the Kalam, and we cannot renew the Kalam. That's what most of the mutakallimun in the 21st century is saying. Let's move forward from productivity to more effectiveness. Let's show results and practical models. My name is Muharib Rashidi. I'm a data science. Just recently, I just entered the Kalam science. Today, we are here to know about Cosmo Kalam platform so that we can take most of it. First, we will discuss what is it. Next, we will discover what can Cosmo Kalam offer us. And then we will learn what are its structure and how it works. And finally, we will discuss what phases are required to implementing it. After this presentation, I'm gonna show you a prototype, an Excel sheet, how things are implemented. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at the end of my presentation. The objective of the platform is to develop a system using the latest data science and artificial intelligence applications. That serve the analysis of the discourse according to the principle of the new Kalam
This will provide an aid in formulating the structural analysis of problem addressed by the new Kalam. What is Cosmo Kalam platform? Cosmo Kalam platform is a system run by certain metrication procedures provided by Professor Dr. Basil Al-Ta'i in his new approach to Kalam. What are the metrication tools? What we are going to use? We are going to use an advanced data mining in addition to natural language processing and invented correlation packages through the machine learning. And we will go through all these terms, definitions, on the next slide. Potential users. We are expecting that the Kalam scientists, Arab scientists as well, researchers, students, and also natural scientists to be involved in this platform. What is data science? We hear about data science and we are wondering, where is it? Data science is at the core is data. Data science, it's a multidiscipline blend of inference, algorithm development, and technology in order to solve analytical complex problems. Data science is ultimately about using this data in creative ways to generate great value. What is the value? Which is the new Kalam. Natural language processing. What is it and why it matters? As a human, you may speak and write in English, Arabic, and Spanish, or Chinese. But a computer's native language, known as machine codes or machine language, is largely incomprehensible to most people. At your device, a lowest level, communications occur not with words, but through millions of zeros and ones that produce logical action. Natural language processing helps computer communicate with a human in their own language. Science scales other language-related tasks. For example, natural language processing makes it possible for computer to read text, hear speech, interpret it, measure sentiment, and determine which parts are important. Natural language processing goes hand in hand with text analytics, which counts, groups, and categorizes words to extract structure and meaning from large volume of content. What is machine learning? We are just trying to explain the most terms in our platform. What is machine learning? Machine learning is a term associated with data science. It refers to a broad class of methods that revolve around data modeling to algorithmically make predictions and algorithmically decipher patterns in data. What can Cosmo Kalam offer us? As it is a system and we need something, benefits out of it. Building technical structure based on philosophical model of the new Kalam approach using the techniques of data science, artificial intelligence, and predefined metrics designed particularly. develop a flexible window of scientists to provide their scientist input based on the new Kalam approach. We will go through a metrication procedure after this slide and the next slides. Centralized governance area of scientists' mind, as you guys, as you gentlemen. Creative thoughts and unify efforts to formulate a renewable system of life that regulate the relationship between religion and science. Building a sophisticated and manageable model which can be widespread and extended to all communities with different cultures and language. Reliable, of course it's reliable. It is a system and open source of information for all research interested parties as well as for public. Cosmo Kalam platform structure.